So today I'll be going over a couple of different things. First, I will review the exam objectives document. So this is one that you receive at the beginning of the program. It's a brief 2-page sheet, and it gives the 10 different sections and types of questions that are asked on the certification exam. So I'll go over this during the PowerPoint, and then afterwards you can refer to that document that we had sent. Then I'm going to give you testing information. So several people have been asking about when the certification test will be and how you can go ahead and organize that. So I will hopefully answer all questions you have up till that point then. And then finally, we'll be open for open Q&A. So I'll go ahead and get started here. We have one more person that logged in. All right, great. So we'll go ahead and get started. So a bit of information about the certification exam before I even begin with this. I know I've mentioned all of this a lot before, but the exam is a 50 multiple choice question exam. So, which I think is nice personally. I like multiple choice because you're able to kind of, use reasoning, and maybe you're between two different answers. You have a 50-50 shot of getting that answer correct. So it's a multiple choice exam, and it is 50 minutes long, 50. So thinking of it that way, it's about a minute per question. You will need a 700 out of 1,000 to pass. So think of that as a 70%. So also think of that as each question being worth 20 points, more or less. So along with the multiple choice aspect of the certification exam, you're going to be receiving 3 Certiport practice exams, which replicate the certification exam itself. And I'll get into that information momentarily here. That'll be more toward the end of our portion here. But just keeping in mind, it is a multiple choice exam. It's timed, and by the time you go through all the different features that we have, such as the practice tests, a couple of quizzes I put together for you all, you'll feel very well prepared going forward from here. So next, I'm going to go over the exam objectives. As I mentioned, this is a document that you're able to access. We sent you at the beginning of the program. So the exam objectives consist of the following. There's 10 different topic areas with different percentages. So I'll be referring to each of these during this portion here. So you can see that topic number one, rather, is QuickBooks Setup. This is 6% of the questions that are asked. So, 3 questions here or there. You will want to know what information is required before you set up a QuickBooks file. So remember, in order to create a company through the Express Start, you'll need to know basic company info and some general operations within the company. You'll want to know how to start a new company file in QuickBooks, how to keep lists and preferences from an old file while removing old transactions, how to customize the home page through preferences, and how to set up lists. So this includes customers, vendors, items, and so on. This will include understanding which names and items should appear on which list. Topic number 2 is QuickBooks Utilities and General Product Knowledge. This is 10% of the questions asked. You will want to know how to navigate or move around QuickBooks using the home page, menus, icon bar, and so on. How to back up and restore a data file in QuickBooks through File, Open, or Restore Company, how to determine the release number and how to update QuickBooks, how to use QuickBooks in single-user and multi-user modes, which versions and editions of QuickBooks are available for a specific year, how to password protect QuickBooks, and how and why to use preferences in QuickBooks. Topic number 3 is list management. Again, this is 6% of the questions asked. You will want to know how to manage lists. This includes customers, vendors, items, and so on. List management will include adding new entries, deleting entries, editing entries, and merging entries. So a quick note about merging entries. To do that, if you want to merge list entries, you will rename the list entry that you would like to merge. And this is page 30 to 32 of the Day 1 manual actually outlines that. Item number 4 is items. So that is 8% of the questions asked. You will want to know how QuickBooks uses items to perform necessary accounting entries, the different types of items and when to use each type. Chapter 5, page 48 of the Day 1 manual has a really good description of this. How to use items for different types of scenarios. So this will include companies that sell products for a specified price, services for a specified price, unique products or services that have different prices for each sale, or one product or service. So you'll want to know the difference between inventory parts, non-inventory parts, and inventory assembly, which is pages 40 to 48 of the Day 1 manual. Item number 5 is sales, which is 10% of the questions asked. You'll want to know the 5 ways to record sales. So this includes invoices, sales receipts, statement charges, deposits, and Excel or Peachtree. You'll want to know who should be listed in the Customer Center, how to navigate and to use the Customer Center, how to complete the workflow from sale to making the deposit for, invoicing, and sales receipt. So remember, when you create an invoice, you do that when someone does not pay at the time of sale, but a sales receipt is for when someone does pay at the time of sale. You'll want to know how QuickBooks uses the undeposited funds, accounts receivable, and checking accounts in the invoicing cycle, how and why to record customer credit, how and why to create statements, so and how to handle bounced or NSF checks. So if someone writes you a bad check, there's a couple-step process, and that's all in the Day 1 manual. Item number 6 is purchases. This is 10% of the questions asked. Think of it as 5 questions. You will want to know who should be listed in the vendor center. So remember, a vendor is anyone you pay. This can mean subcontractors, a utility company, your landlord, tax agencies, and so on. You'll want to know how to navigate and use the vendor center, the different workflows for making purchases, including entering and paying bills, writing checks, how to use a credit card, and how to use a debit card, how to record transactions in the purchase workflows, how and why to record a vendor credit, how to set up complete inventory workflow or purchase order to payment, how to set up, collect, and pay sales tax, and then finally, bank reconciliations. So topic number 7 is payroll. This is 12% of what is asked. To make a quick note here, so I went through the training, I had done a couple of the practice tests and noticed that payroll was an area where I was not doing very well. So I made sure to refer to the Day 2 manual. Chapter 5 goes over payroll. So I made sure to drill that for myself. You will want to know the differences between payroll services available from QuickBooks. So this includes basic, enhanced, assisted, and direct. How to set up payroll, including employees, federal and state taxes, and basic payroll reductions using the Payroll Setup Wizard. How to set up an employee's earnings and sick or vacation time. How to track sick or vacation time, accruing hours, and using banked hours. How and why to set up payroll schedules. How to run payroll or pay employees. How and why to pay payroll liabilities. How to prepare payroll forms, including 941 and W-2 in QuickBooks, and how to track time and use it for payroll or for invoicing customers. Topic number 8 is reports. This is 16% of what is asked, so 8 questions. Noting this is the largest percent of questions that are on the certification exam, so I made sure to drill this too. You'll want to know how and why to use the report center, how to customize reports, including report modifications, collapsing subaccounts, etc., using the Customize Report button, the basic questions that each report answers, basic understanding of each report, how and why to process multiple reports, how and why to send reports to Excel, understanding and using the basic and advanced tab, and how to memorize reports. So if there's a report that you want to run often, you'll want to either create a memorized report group, which is in this training, or you can click the Memorize button within a report to do that. Topic number 9 is basic accounting. This is 10% of what is asked. You'll want to know what the basic financial statements are and have a basic understanding of what they mean, the difference between cash and accrual reports. So remember, accrual-based accounting recognizes expenses and income in the period that they occurred, and this is regardless if payment has actually occurred. But cash-basis accounting does not recognize items until they've actually been paid. You'll want to know how and why to set a closing date. It's important because it allows you to close the books and to not change any financial transactions dated for that year. You'll want to know how to enter a journal entry if asked to do so by an accountant as well. And then topic number 10 here is customization and saving time and shortcuts. This is 12% of what is asked. You'll want to know how and why to memorize transactions by automatically entering, how to set up multiple reports and what level of access can be granted or denied, and how and why to create custom fields, including customers, vendors, and employees. So I see that we have a question here in the box. I'll go ahead and make sure I get to that at the end of the portion here. But next, what I'm going to do is move on to practice tests and testing information. So now that we've gone over the exam objectives, you know what to expect. I'll talk a little bit about the practice. So once you have completed all the training and metrics learning, so that is all 4 items, you'll receive your certification voucher along with the 3 practice tests that I mentioned that directly replicate the certification exam. So I'll talk a little bit about that. In addition to this practice, upon completing training, you'll receive additional practice for the QuickBooks certification exam. We put this together, and it consists of practice questions and a couple of quizzes that very closely replicate the types of questions you'll get on the certification exam. Again, you'll notice that you receive the voucher taking the metrics learning training, so it's not required, but it's highly recommended that you look at these. Kind of speaking for Nikki and myself, with the practice questions we received, we went through these so many different times just to make sure that we had everything drilled. So, I mean, the more practice you have, the better, and that's why we give you access to this information. So the 2 types of practice that you'll receive are the QuickBooks quiz questions through QuizStar. So we created an online quiz that is much like the type of multiple choice you'll get for the certification exam. So these are 2 50-question multiple choice quizzes. You know, you can pick A, B, C, and D. You're able to flag questions for review at the end of the exam, much like you are in the certification exam itself. And they're just very helpful. What is helpful is you do get that multiple choice, so the more practice you have with that, the better. Also, you'll receive QuickBooks practice questions. So there are 2 PDFs with 100 practice questions. One has the answers, one does not have the answers. So I actually created the quiz based upon these questions. They're the same for both. But what customers were saying through this program was, listen, I'm going through these multiple choice questions. It's not helping me that the answers are right in front of me. So you have 2 choices to be able to practice. You can either go through QuizStar, which I send you access to. You'll use your metrics learning login on their website, or you can review the PDF with the practice questions that I sent. So either or, but definitely recommended moving forward from here. So let's see here. So I think we have a question. I'll get to that at the end. So that is the additional practice. Again, this is not required. Now on to information about the practice exams. So as I mentioned, each Certiport voucher comes with 3 practice tests that you'll be able to take before the exam. They directly replicate the type of certification exam questions and feel of the exam, which is very helpful. So it's kind of like having 3 shots at the real thing before you actually take the certification exam. The practice test can be accessed at your home computer, but it does require that you download certain features, including a browser lockdown, from Certiport. So once you receive your voucher, I automatically send all the information that you'll need for the 3 practice tests too, including how to install the browser lockdown and things like that. You'll receive this all in a email. So kind of prefacing this, practice tests cannot be accessed on Mac computers or if you have Internet Explorer 11. This is the most recent version of IE, and Certiport's practice just is not compatible with this at this point. So I'll get into some further information later on how you can access these practice tests if you run into these 2 categories. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the practice test access. If you do not have computer access at home or you do have Mac or IE11, Brooklyn Public Library has designated a date and time that you're able to access the practice tests at the Central Library, which is also where testing will take place. So the information is right here, Monday, June 2nd from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. You'll be able to access that in room 216 at Central Library in Grand Army Plaza. So now moving forward into certification testing, which is something that I have been asked about pretty frequently, so I figured I'd address it all here. So Brooklyn Public Library has designated several different dates and times. There's actually 3 different dates and a couple different times, both evening and afternoon, for you to be able to take the certification exam. So all this information is listed here. Again, the exam is 50 minutes long, so you'll have your choice of the different time slots here. Tuesday, June 3rd, we'll be testing in the evening from 6 to 6:50 p.m., and then again from 7:30 to 8:10. Wednesday also has evening testing listed at these same hours here. And then for this, just a bit of background information, for the 6 p.m. test, the room will open at 5:30. And then Friday, June 6th, there is both morning and afternoon time slots for testing. So there's 10:30 a.m. to 11:20 and then noon to 12:50. So as it shows here, each time slot will accommodate up to 6 testers. So moving forward from here, with those testing time and dates, Brooklyn Public Library asks that you email them at metrics@brooklynlibrary.org with your first and second choice test time, and if you plan on using the practice time by the end of the day on Monday, June 2nd. Following up with this, I will send an email after this webinar with that same information, just so you have it in writing. And then once you pick your first and second time slot, you can feel free to give them an email here by the date that is listed. So at this point, I'm open to any questions that you have moving forward. I see that we have a couple here in the information sheet. One of the questions, let me see here. All right, so if you do have any questions, feel free to send them off. I see that we have a couple here. Chat. So we do have a comment here. Each exam is going to be 50 minutes long. So the second date and time for testing, which is Wednesday, June 4th, the 7:30 exam is also 50 minutes long. So it will start at 7:30 and will go up until 8:20. And so we have a comment here about the Quiz Star, which I sent to those of you who have finished all of your training. So the Quiz Star quizzes have, 50 multiple choice questions. You can access it through the link that I'll send you. You're able to take those up to 10 times, which is really helpful. And then again, the cert report, you'll get the 3 practice tests. And those are available, with your voucher, and you can access those at home if you do have a home computer, if not, the library. So do we have any other questions at this point? This is kind of a lot of information all at once. I do have a question here regarding technical and Skillsoft. Something I should have mentioned at the start of this, if you are having technical issues, please contact us at our support email. I'm going to go ahead and, we'll address that all on a one-by-one basis, but I want to make sure that this session itself is strictly for review and test-related questions. But again, if you are having trouble, I know that I've been speaking with a couple people who had technical issue, please contact us at our support address. And we have a question here. Monday is the only time to access the practice test. The answer to that is no. If you have a home computer, you are able to access those practice tests at any point. And I send all the information that you need for downloading to your computer, to your email rather, so you can access those at any time. But for people who only have a Mac or Internet Explorer 11 or do not have a home computer, Monday is available for those people. So So any other questions at this point? I'll kind of keep talking until you do have them. So the certification exam, a question that I do get kind of often is, you know, will I find out on the spot if I, you know, the score of my exam, if I pass? So when you take the certification exam itself, it's about a 1 or 2 minute wait until you find out if you pass. So it doesn't sound long, but it can kind of feel long. So you'll find out right on the spot if you do pass, again, with that 700 or more. If you are not to pass the exam the first time through, you do have a retake that comes with a voucher. So you'll be able to retake the exam within a 30-day time period and, you know, kind of work with the public and be able to figure that out.
Hello.
So I just ask that everyone mutes their microphone so that there's no background noise for this program here. All right, great. We should be good. So, you know, kind of along with that, in preparing for the certification exam, of course, take all of your training. I do highly recommend that you access that quiz star as well as the practice questions that I sent. I think that all of that practice is invaluable, but I really think that the 3 practice tests that you do get through Certiport are the best replication because it's just like taking the exam itself, really. You use a browser lockdown there, you use a browser lockdown, which means that you can't really, you know, explore the internet while you're taking the exam. With that also, you know, you're able to flag questions for review later. It's timed. You're also able to see your answers to your questions while you're taking the practice test. Of course, you won't be able to do that for the normal exam, but having that feedback is very helpful. You know, in taking it, so you're able to go through and, you know, in general, just having 3 shots at the real thing is through practice is very helpful. I know that myself, I hadn't taken the time to take exam for a while, so I found it really helpful to have all of this. So again, we're going to be using chat for audio. If you do have any questions, feel free to use the chat box.
Hello? Chat box. Well, how are you going to do that if I can't even do it? Chat box. There's the chat box here where it's 5 people, 6 people.
Hi, excuse me. Can you please mute your microphone?
Hello?
Hi, we have a bit of background noise. If you can either mute your microphone or just use the chat box, this is being recorded. So if you go ahead and click chat, I'll bring the slide up so you're able to see exactly where to do that. But again, most of the people on this call are using chat specifically. So you're able to use chat through the window in GoToMeeting all the way to the right. So we have a question here. What other browser other than IE11 can be used? Actually, IE11 is not compatible with the Certiport. IE 8, 9, and 10 are. So long as you are only using those 3, you'll be able to take the certification practice. All right, so we have a question. Again, I'm going to be sending all of the information regarding testing times and dates in a follow-up email along with this recorded session. So you'll have all of that information kind of all in one place. But I will go ahead and bring up when testing is just so you can have that information on hand. So again, the testing for Friday morning at June 6th is 10:30 a.m. till 11:20. So, and also we have a kind of request here for a testing time and date. Please send those to the address that we'd given for metrics at Brooklyn Library. So what they'll do is they will put all that information all in one place, and they'll be able to get back to you about your first and second testing time and date preferences. So the practice, again, the practice tests, to access those at the library, that is only for people who do not have computer access at home or have a Mac or Internet Explorer 11. If you have home access to a computer and you're able to download to the computer, you're able to access that right then. So if you are kind of, you don't have any of the above, what you're able to do is go to the library to take the practice exams on Monday, June 2nd from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. So if you do fall into those categories and, you're wanting to take the practice test, you'll want to contact Brooklyn Public Library, as I had mentioned. Here's their contact here. So another one we have, Vicki, I will get back to you regarding your practice test through Certiport. So I'll talk to you after this because that is a technical thing. And what we can do is we can contact Certiport if needed. All right, do we have any other questions regarding the certification exam, what to expect? I'll stay on the line here for a couple more minutes, so feel free to just go ahead and type them. So we have a good question here about the practice test. So the practice tests, you have 3 of them, and they are for one-time use. So once you, use a practice test, you can move on to the next one, but you do only have 3 of them. Along with that, for those of you who are preparing for the certification exam, I recommend that you take at least 2 of them before you take the full thing. So we have a question here regarding completing the program and not being able to use your computer. We will work with you directly, again, because this is a technical matter, and just contact myself in the library if you're unable to be able to take training. And, I mentioned there's the 3 practice tests in time, so if you are needing one of the later dates, contact the library and things like that. But again, they have computer access there, and several different ways that you're able to access the practice tests as well as training. Not a problem. So, following up with this, I know that people are kind of at a couple of different, points in taking training. Some people have had technical issues, which, again, we'll work with you through. But, just continue to take training. There are several different dates that you can choose to, take the certification exam next week. But my recommendation is just get to the training. And once you do finish that 2009 course, you will have that voucher. We'll give you access to those 3 practice tests, and you'll be able to move forward from there. We have a great question here. Is the test only on QuickBooks 2009, like SkillSoft portion of the course, or is it on 2009 and 2012? The exam that you are taking is on QuickBooks 2012, so you'll become certified in Pro and Premier. So the Mastering QuickBooks Level 1 course, that is on 2012. And then we give you access to the 2009 so you can kind of replicate the use of QuickBooks, but all of the materials and everything we'll be sending you, along with, again, that Mastering QuickBooks is on 12. Not a problem. Was anyone able to view the review video for day 2 of the training? For those of you who are still, either finishing up with the Master in QuickBooks, I know there's a couple of people, or if you just want a good review of what is on the certification exam, we do have those two those recorded review videos, and those are on YouTube. I had sent the links to both of those, and if you want, I can go ahead and resend those links. But what I did with those two videos is try to give a good background about, what's asked about on the certification exam, and also, give you kind of a direction. What I did was I went off of those exam objectives that I referred to earlier, and I went through the different topics. So that you don't have to go through all 12 hours of the Mastering QuickBooks in preparation, I do recommend listening to those two videos. They're about 15 and 20 minutes long, respectively. And we have a question here. You stated I'm unable to take practice tests on a Mac or Internet Explorer 11. This is correct. Internet Explorer 11 is the only version of IE that is not compatible with the practice tests, and you're not able to take the practice tests on Macs either. So along with that, if you do, fall into either of those two categories with your computer use, you're able to email Brooklyn Public Library to arrange, the practice tests on that date of Monday the 2nd. And you're welcome. We have a good question here. Do you need the voucher number in order to send testing date preferences to BPO? You do not. However, we would like you to send testing date preferences after you have actually completed all of your training and metrics. And the way that the voucher number works is, and you'll get all this information, when you create a Certiport account, you'll add the voucher into your account. It loads those practice tests right in there for you. And the day of the certification exam, you'll use your Certiport login to actually log into testing. And your Certiport login is different from the metrics login, of course. It's kind of, two different things. We have a question here. Can we now take other metrics courses? My recommendation is that you hold off on taking other metrics courses until you actually take the certification exam. And that's just to focus. So we want you to be able to take as much practice as possible and be able to focus on QuickBooks before going forward. However, you do have a 6-month license, so beyond this program, you have plenty of time to be able to take other courses too. Can I use another browser like Firefox for practice tests is another question. The answer to that, unfortunately, is no. They are only compatible with Internet Explorer. Going off of that, too, I've noticed with some people, taking training that you've taken the Master in QuickBooks or you've moved on to the 2009 course, but things may not have recorded for Master in QuickBooks Level 1. If you did use a browser that was not Internet Explorer, chances are your progress did not record. If you've completed and, it didn't record certain bubbles or your progress, just let us know. Shoot me an email, and we can address it from there. And not a problem. I know, again, that people have been having technical trouble. We can, reach out to you and figure things out from there. But with the 2009 course, some of the things, to mention this, people have been experiencing is it'll mark a question wrong, or, sometimes you'll select something and it might, mark it as wrong even though it is right. Along with this, what I did, noting that customers were having frustration, is I actually worked with Skillsoft and dissected the course, went bit by bit, recorded anything that may have gone wrong. With the course itself, there's nothing wrong within the course player itself, within the course itself, rather. It is very exact what it will have you do. For instance, it might ask you to put a comma. You have to put a comma to get the question right. A suggestion I do have is the show me for the different simulations is very helpful, and it can kind of show you what they expect. But again, there's nothing within the course itself. I know some people have had some technical trouble. You will be able to complete the course and without a problem there, but just make sure that you are, putting the periods or putting the commas, things like that. We have a comment here. Someone did QuickBooks on Google Chrome, which was recommended. So again, IE, Internet Explorer, is the preferred Internet browser. For people who were not able to get into IE, we did recommend Chrome. If you did use Chrome and it did not record, let us know, is what I'm trying to say. It still will work, but IE is preferred because sometimes Chrome does not record. However, that is a second option. But with the Certiport practice test, you do need to use IE. All right, at this point, I'm going to give 1 more minute for questions here. Go ahead and type away. And again, I know this is a lot of information all at once, but you're all doing the right thing. You're here today. You're taking the training. And once you're finished, we'll give you plenty of practice. You'll feel well prepared for the exam. And Nikki and myself are here to, help through this whole process because we have been through it and we understand. So. All right, at this point, what I'm going to go ahead and do is sign off. Again, thank you all so much for being here this afternoon. We had a lot of great questions all around. I'm creating a recording of this, so you will be able to access the recorded version. I'll go ahead and send that out shortly. In addition, I will send the schedule for testing out, too, just so you'll have a copy of that. You can go ahead and email the library with your preferences. If you do have any questions throughout this training, please let us know. That's what we're here for, and we look forward to helping you with the next step of this process and actually getting you certified in QuickBooks. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.